The alien commanders could not sleep that night. They sat in their war rooms watching the battle recordings over and over again, trying to understand how 12 humans had defeated 1,500 of their best soldiers. The videos showed impossible, things that made no sense to minds trained in galactic warfare. General Vex played the same scene 20 times where Sergeant Park Min seemed to appear from empty air behind 3 alien soldiers. The thermal sensors showed nothing. The motion detectors were silent. But suddenly a human was there knocking out trained warriors with his bare hands, then he vanished again like smoke in the wind. Major. Kim Tae sat with the alien officers explaining what they had witnessed, but could not understand. The aliens fought like they were playing a video game, following the same patterns they had learned in training school. They moved in straight lines, used their sensors the same way every time, and expected their technology to win battles for them. But humans fight like hunters. Kim Tae said in simple words that the aliens could understand. You have sensors that can see through walls, but humans can see signs that your machines cannot read. They know you are coming before your computers know where they are going. Captain Eugene watched a recording where the humans had set a trap using nothing but rocks and fallen branches. When a squad of alien soldiers walked through the forest, the ground collapsed under them, and they fell into a pit. The humans had dug the hole with their hands and covered it so perfectly that advanced alien scanners could not detect it. The aliens had powerful energy weapons that could destroy buildings, but the humans made them useless. The humans never stayed in one place long enough to be shot. They moved from cover to cover using the forest itself as armor. Their metal bullets could not penetrate alien shields, but they did not need to. The humans aimed for weak points in the armor and used the aliens' own weight against them. What scared the alien commanders most was how the humans reacted when one of their team was hit. Corporal Song Woo had been struck by a training plasma bolt that marked him as eliminated. Instead of retreating or becoming more careful, the other humans became like demons. They fought with a fury that the aliens had never seen before. Eugene had studied many species across the galaxy. Most creatures became weaker when their group was attacked. They would run away or surrender to save themselves. But humans became more dangerous when their friends were hurt. They fought harder and took bigger risks, as if losing people made them stronger, instead of weaker. The alien troops had panicked the moment they advanced. Equipment failed to provide easy victory. They were used to enemies who would surrender when faced with superior technology, but the humans kept fighting. Even when they should have been defeated, they adapted to every alien tactic and turned every alien advantage into a weakness. The recording showed human soldiers doing things that seemed impossible to alien minds. They could remain perfectly still for hours, waiting for the right moment to strike. They could track enemies through thick forest, using tiny signs that alien sensors missed. They could predict where alien patrols would go before the aliens themselves. One video showed Private Han Su hiding under a pile of leaves for 3 hours, while alien soldiers searched all around him. Their thermal scanners passed right over his position, but could not detect him because he had used mud and plant material to match the temperature of his surroundings. When the aliens finally moved away, he followed them silently and eliminated their entire squad. The alien military leaders called for their best scientists to explain what they were seeing. Dr. Czar studied the human battle footage and made a disturbing discovery. The humans were not using any special technology or advanced training. They were simply being human. These creatures evolved on a death world, Czar told the assembled commanders. Every day of their evolution was a battle for survival. They learned to hunt animals that were bigger, faster, and stronger than them. They developed skills over millions of years that we cannot match with technology. The aliens had evolved on peaceful worlds where food was abundant and predators were rare. Their species had developed technology quickly because they did not need to spend all their time fighting for survival. But this also meant they had never learned the skills that humans considered basic survival techniques. Human children learned to track and hunt before they could properly speak. They played games that taught them strategy and combat. Their entire culture was built around conflict and survival, while alien cultures focused on cooperation and technological advancement. This made humans natural warriors, while aliens were natural builders. The battle. Recordings showed this difference clearly. Alien soldiers would stand in the open using their sensors to search for enemies, making themselves perfect targets for human snipers. The aliens relied on their technology to protect them. But humans had learned to fight enemies who were naturally stronger and better equipped. When alien equipment malfunctioned or ran out of power, the soldiers did not know what to do. They had never learned to fight without their tools. But humans had grown up using simple weapons and basic tactics. They could fight with rocks and sticks if necessary, because their ancestors had done exactly that for countless generations. The most terrifying recording showed what happened when the humans took casualties instead of becoming disorganized like most species. Humans seemed to share information instantly. The moment one human spotted an enemy position, all the other humans knew about it without using any communication devices they could see. "This is impossible," one alien commander said while watching the footage. "How do they coordinate without radios or data links?" Kim Tai smiled sadly. "Because they have been hunting together for millions of years. They can read body language and micro-expressions that your species never developed. They communicate with tiny movements and sounds that your sensors cannot detect." The alien scientists ran test after test, but could not explain how humans seemed to know things they should not know. The truth was that humans had evolved as pack hunters who needed to work together to bring down large prey. They had developed nonverbal communication skills that were so advanced they seemed like magic to other species. By the end of the week, every alien military unit in the sector had heard about the impossible defeat. The stories grew with each telling until the humans seemed like supernatural beings who could walk through walls and read minds. The fear was spreading faster than any weapon could travel. The Galactic Council demanded a second exercise to prove that the first defeat was just luck. They could not accept that their mighty military had been beaten by primitive humans. General Vex volunteered to lead 10,000 troops against 50 human soldiers. He was sure that overwhelming numbers would solve the problem, but Captain Lee Jun knew better. The aliens still did not understand what they were facing. They thought the problem was numbers or tactics. But the real issue was much deeper. Humans were simply a different kind of creature than anything the galaxy had ever seen before. The second battle would take place in a city environment where alien technology would have clear advantages. The aliens could level buildings with their energy weapons, and their sensors would work better in urban areas. They expected an easy victory this time. Lieutenant Colonel Choi Hai would lead the human forces in the second exercise. She was small by human standards, but her mind had been shaped by decades of warfare on Earth. She understood that the real battle was not about weapons or technology. It was about breaking the enemy will to fight. The aliens were about to learn that the first defeat was not luck. It was just humans being human. And in the coming battle, they would discover that fear could be a more powerful weapon than any plasma cannon or energy shield. General Vex refused to believe that his mighty army could be defeated by primitive humans. He stood before 10,000 of his best warriors on the planet Korax, where a massive city had been built for training exercises. The buildings were made of metal and stone, perfect for testing urban warfare tactics. "This time will be different," Vex announced to his troops. "We have overwhelming numbers, and the city environment favors our technology. The humans cannot hide in trees and mud like they did before. Our energy weapons will destroy any building they try to use for cover." Lieutenant Colonel Choi Hai studied the city from her command position high on a hill. She was a small woman with quiet eyes, but her mind had been forged through decades of conflict on Earth. She had fought in cities before and knew that buildings were not just shelter. They were weapons waiting to be used. The 50 human soldiers under her command looked ordinary compared to the massive alien army below. Each human carried simple equipment and wore basic armor that seemed pathetic next to the advanced alien gear. But Choi Hai knew that wars were won in the mind, not with technology. When the exercise began, the aliens launched a massive assault that shook the ground. Energy weapons lit up the sky as entire city blocks were destroyed in minutes. The noise was so loud that it could be heard from space. The aliens expected the humans to surrender immediately when faced with such overwhelming firepower. Instead, the humans vanished. The 50 soldiers seemed to melt into the rubble like water disappearing into sand. The alien sensors showed empty buildings and clear streets. But somehow the humans had become invisible again, even in an urban environment, where hiding should have been impossible. For the first day, the alien army controlled every street and building in the city. Their sensors swept constantly searching for any sign of human activity. Their patrols marched through the ruins in perfect formation, confident that victory was just a matter of time. The commanders in orbit watched and waited for the humans to appear, but nothing happened. The city was silent, except for the sound of alien boots on broken concrete. No shots were fired, no battles were fought, and no humans were detected anywhere. The aliens began to wonder if the human soldiers had somehow escaped from the exercise area entirely. On the second day, strange things began to happen. Alien sentries who were guarding important positions would disappear without making any sound. Their squad mates would turn around and find empty armor lying on the ground with no sign of what had happened to the soldier. Inside equipment started malfunctioning in ways that made no sense. Energy weapons would discharge by themselves, draining their power cells. Communication devices would play strange sounds that hurt alien ears. Vehicles would break down, even though their computers showed no mechanical problems. Sergeant Beijun moved through the destroyed city like a ghost. He had grown up in the crowded streets of Seoul and understood how to use urban environments as weapons. Every piece of rubble could hide a soldier. Every shadow could conceal movement, and every sound could be either real or fake. The humans had turned the ruined city into a living nightmare for the alien troops. They used the aliens' own destroyed buildings against them, creating hiding places that sensors could not detect. They moved through sewers and underground tunnels that the aliens did not know existed. Private Yura specialized in psychological warfare. She had learned that fear was more powerful than bullets against an enemy that relied on technology and predictable tactics. The best weapon was confusion. She placed small devices that made weird noises in random locations around the city. The aliens would hear sounds that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Whispers in the wind, footsteps that stopped when they turned around, and clicking noises that followed their patrols through empty streets. The alien soldiers began to jump at shadows and fire their weapons at nothing. By the third day, the alien army was falling apart from the inside. The soldiers were exhausted from lack of sleep because the strange sounds continued all night. They refused to patrol alone and insisted on staying in large groups, but this made them easier targets for human psychological attacks. Corporal Moon-ji used the aliens' advanced sensors against them. He had learned how the alien equipment worked and placed heat sources in random locations that would trigger their thermal detectors. When alien troops rushed to investigate, they would find nothing but the memory of being fooled again. The humans had become masters of misdirection. They would throw rocks to create noise in one direction, while moving silently in another. They would use mirrors to reflect light and create false sensor readings. They turned the aliens' own paranoia into a weapon that was more effective than any gun. The alien commanders could not understand what was happening. Their troops reported seeing humans everywhere, but could never capture or eliminate any of them. The psychological pressure was so intense that veteran soldiers who had fought in dozens of battles were requesting to be sent home. The humans were using every trick their species had developed over thousands of years of warfare. They understood that the mind was the most important battlefield and that a scared enemy was already half defeated. The aliens had superior technology, but humans had superior psychology. On the morning of the fourth day, something unprecedented happened in galactic military history. An entire alien battalion refused to leave their base. They claimed that the humans were supernatural beings who could walk through walls and appear from thin air. The fear had become so intense that trained soldiers would rather face court-martial than patrol the city. General Vex flew down to the planet's surface to see the situation for himself. What he found was an army that was technically intact, but mentally broken. The soldiers were jumping at every sound and firing their weapons at anything that moved, including their own shadows. The humans had won without killing a single alien soldier. They had used fear as their primary weapon, turning the aliens' own imaginations against them. The psychological warfare was so effective that the mighty Galactic fleet had been defeated by their own minds. Choi Hai watched from her hidden position as alien troops huddled together in their base, afraid to venture outside. The humans had proved that advanced technology meant nothing when the people using it were too scared to function properly. The mind was the ultimate weapon and humans were its masters. The recordings from this exercise spread through the alien fleet even faster than the first defeat. Stories grew and changed with each telling, until the humans seemed like demons who could control reality itself. The fear was becoming a virus that infected every alien military unit. Back on the flagship, Commander Kang Su read reports that made no sense to his logical alien mind. How could 50 humans defeat 10,000 troops without firing a shot? How could primitive beings break the will of the galaxy's most advanced military force? Captain Li Jun explained it simply. Humans learned long ago that the strongest enemy can be defeated if you attack their mind instead of their body. We do not need to kill you to win. We just need to make you afraid to fight. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humans were not just another species with primitive technology. They were psychological. Warriors who could turn any environment, any situation, and any enemy's strength into a weapon against them. The real battle was not about guns or armor, it was about who could control fear, and in that battle, humans were the undisputed masters. The big spaceship floated above the planet called Zerion like a metal mountain in the sky. Commander Kang Su stood in the control room looking at the blue and green world below him. He had won many battles for the Galactic Council and today would be no different. The humans from Earth were new to space and their weapons looked like toys compared to alien technology. Kang Su read the reports about human soldiers on his data screen. The humans still used metal bullets and chemical rockets, while the aliens had energy weapons that could melt through steel in seconds. Their ships could cross the galaxy in days while human ships took months to travel between planets. Everything about the humans seemed weak and old-fashioned. General Vex walked into the control room with heavy steps. His reptile skin was dark green and covered in scars from 100 battles. He was 3 times taller than any human, and his claws could cut through metal. He looked at the human reports and laughed, with a sound like breaking rocks. "The humans have no chance against us," Vex said in his deep voice. "Their weapons are from the Stone Age compared to ours. We have conquered 40 star systems and destroyed armies 10 times larger than theirs. This will be over before lunchtime." Captain Li Jun sat quietly in the corner of the room. He was the only human on the alien ship and had been watching how the aliens fought for many months. He knew something the aliens did not know. Humans were different from every other species in the galaxy, but the aliens would learn this the hard way. The alien military had ruled space for 3,000 years. They had never lost a single battle because they always fought weaker enemies with worse technology. Every planet they conquered had the same story. The aliens would arrive with their big ships and powerful weapons, and the local armies would surrender without much fighting. But Earth was not like other planets. The humans had spent their entire history fighting each other and everything else on their deadly world. They had learned to survive in places where most aliens would die in minutes. They had turned war into an art form that no other species understood. The exercise would take place on Zerion, which was a training planet covered in forests and mountains. The alien commanders had chosen 12 human soldiers to fight against 1,500 of their best warriors. It was supposed to show how weak humans were compared to the mighty Galactic Fleet Sergeant Park. Min led the human team down to the planet's surface in a small metal box that the aliens called a transport ship. The 12 humans carried simple weapons that fired metal bullets and wore basic armor that looked primitive compared to alien gear. The aliens had energy shields that could stop most weapons and sensors that could see through walls. The alien troops landed in massive ships that shook the ground when they touched down. They wore powered armor that made them stronger and faster than any normal creature. Their plasma rifles could burn holes through trees, and their helmets showed them exactly where every enemy was hiding. They expected this to be the easiest battle of their lives. As the sun came up over Zerion, the exercise began. The aliens spread out across the forest in perfect formations, just like their training manuals taught them. They moved slowly and carefully, scanning with their advanced sensors for any sign of the human soldiers. Their commanders watched from orbit, expecting to see a quick and total victory. But something strange happened. The 12 humans seemed to disappear into the forest like ghosts. The alien sensors showed nothing. The thermal imaging found no heat signatures. The motion detector stayed silent. It was as if the humans had never existed at all. Hours passed and the alien soldiers grew nervous. They were used to fighting enemies they could see and track with their technology. But the humans had vanished completely. The forest was full of alien troops searching for an enemy that seemed to have turned invisible. Then the attacks began. An alien soldier would be walking with his unit when suddenly he would fall down unconscious. His friends would turn around but see nothing. The human who had knocked him out was already gone, moving through the trees like a shadow. The aliens started to panic because their enemies were everywhere and nowhere at the same time. The humans moved through the forest using skills their species had learned over millions of years. They could track enemies by looking at broken twigs and disturbed leaves. They could hide in places where alien sensors could not find them. They could move without making any sound at all while the aliens crashed through the woods like big metal monsters. Park Min and his team had studied the aliens for months. They knew exactly how the alien technology worked and how to avoid it. They used mud and leaves to block thermal sensors. They moved in ways that confused motion detectors. They turned the aliens' own advanced equipment against them. When the aliens tried to use their plasma weapons, the humans were never where the aliens expected them to be. When the aliens spread out to search, the humans would attack the groups that were alone. When the aliens stayed together, the humans would disappear completely. The alien commanders in orbit could not believe what they were seeing. Their sensors showed 1,500 of their best soldiers running around in circles while 12 primitive humans picked them off one by one. The humans were not just winning. They were making the aliens look foolish by afternoon. Half the alien force had been eliminated in the training exercise. The aliens who were still active were scared and confused. They jumped at every sound and fired their weapons at shadows. They had never faced an enemy like this before. The humans fought like they had been born in the forest. They used every tree, rock, and stream as part of their battle plan. They set traps using materials they found on the ground. They created diversions that sent alien troops running in the wrong direction. They were not just soldiers. They were hunters. As the sun began to set, the last alien soldiers surrendered. The exercise was over and every single alien warrior had been defeated while all 12 humans were still fighting. The impossible had happened. The mighty Galactic fleet had been beaten by a handful of primitive humans using old-fashioned weapons. Commander Kang Su stared at his screens in shock. General Vex had stopped laughing and was reading the battle reports over and over, trying to understand what had gone wrong. Captain Lee, June smiled quietly, knowing that this was just the beginning. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were not like any other species they had ever encountered. The alien troops came back to their ships confused and embarrassed. They had been trained to fight other aliens who used similar tactics and technology. But the humans fought like wild animals with the intelligence of advanced beings. They were something completely new and terrifying. News of the defeat spread through the alien fleet. Like wildfire, soldiers who had never lost a battle began to whisper about the strange humans, who could turn invisible and strike without warning. The humans had won their first battle against the galaxy, and everyone knew this was just the start. News of the second impossible defeat spread through the Galactic fleet like wildfire. Alien soldiers who had never known fear in their lives began requesting transfers to distant planets, far from any human presence. The psychological impact was devastating because if the Galactic fleet's elite troops could not defeat a handful of humans, what hope did regular soldiers have? Dr. Park's son arrived at the main command ship 3 days after the urban warfare exercise. She was a human scientist who had spent years studying alien species and understanding how their minds worked. The alien commanders had demanded answers, and she was the only person who could explain why humans seemed so terrifyingly effective. The meeting room was filled. With the galaxy's most experienced military leaders, General Vex sat at the head of the table, his reptilian features showing confusion and fear. For the first time in his long career, Commander Kang Su studied data screens that made no sense to his logical mind while other alien officers whispered among themselves. Dr. Park Sun stood before the assembled commanders with calm confidence. She had expected this day would come because she understood something the aliens did not. Humans were fundamentally different from every other intelligent species in the galaxy, and that difference made them natural warriors. Your species evolved on peaceful worlds. She began speaking in simple words that the universal translator could handle easily. Your planets had abundant food, few natural disasters, and almost no dangerous predators. You developed technology quickly because you did not spend all your time fighting for survival. The alien commanders nodded because this was exactly how their civilizations had developed. Their homeworlds were garden planets where life was easy, and cooperation was more important than conflict. They had built great cities and powerful spaceships because they could focus on creation instead of destruction, but Earth is different, Dr. Park's son continued. Her voice remained calm, but her words carried a weight that made the aliens uncomfortable. Earth is what you call a death world, where almost everything is trying to kill everything else. Humans evolved not as builders but as hunters. She activated a holographic display that showed images of Earth. The aliens gasped when they saw the deadly creatures that lived on the human homeworld. Predators with massive teeth and claws, natural disasters that could level entire continents, and diseases that could wipe out entire populations. On your worlds, the biggest danger might be falling from a tree, she said. But on Earth, humans faced creatures that could crush them with one bite, storms that could destroy mountains, and ice ages that lasted for thousands of years. Everything about our planet forced us to become perfect survivors. Colonel Nam-Ki stepped forward to demonstrate the differences between human and alien soldiers. He was one of Earth's most decorated special forces officers, and his presence made several aliens step backwards unconsciously. Even though they knew he was not a threat, watch closely, Nam-Ki said as he moved across the room without making any sound at all. His footsteps were silent, his breathing was controlled, and his movements were so smooth they seemed almost liquid. The aliens tried to track him with their advanced sensors, but he had learned to avoid detection. Human soldiers can remain motionless for hours waiting for the perfect shot, Nam-Ki explained while crouching in a position that would be impossible for most aliens to maintain. We can track enemies using signs that your machines cannot detect. We can continue fighting with injuries that would kill most of your warriors. He showed the aliens how humans could read tracks in dirt, identify different types of plants that could be used as medicine, and navigate using only the stars in the sky. These were skills that every human child learned, but they seemed like magic to aliens who relied on technology for everything. The most important difference, Dr. Park's son said, is how humans adapt to new situations. Your military tactics have not changed in centuries because they have always worked against similar enemies. But humans change their fighting style to counter every new threat they face. She showed recordings from the 2 exercises where human soldiers had completely altered their approach based on what they learned about alien weaknesses. In the forest, humans had used stealth and ambush tactics. In the city, they had employed psychological warfare. Each battle plan was custom designed to exploit alien vulnerabilities. Your species developed as prey animals that acquired predator tools, she continued. Humans developed as predators that learned to use intelligence strategically. You fight like herbivores with advanced weapons. We fight like carnivores with thinking brains. The alien commanders began to understand why their technology had been useless against humans. Their energy weapons and sensors were designed to fight other aliens who used predictable tactics and similar technology. But humans fought like the universe itself was their weapon. Nam-Ki demonstrated human adaptability by showing how soldiers could turn any environment into an advantage. In space, humans could use zero gravity in ways that confused aliens who needed artificial gravity to function. On planets, humans could survive in conditions that would kill most other species within minutes. But the most shocking revelation was about human pack behavior. Dr. Park's son explained that humans had evolved to work together in ways that seemed telepathic to other species. Human soldiers could coordinate complex operations without electronic communication using body language and micro-expressions that other species could not even detect. This is why your sensors could not track them, she said. Humans communicate below the threshold of your detection equipment. They share information through methods your technology was never designed to monitor. They fight as one organism instead of individual soldiers. The alien officers looked at each other with growing terror. They were beginning to understand that they had not just encountered better soldiers, they had met an entirely different category of life form. one that had been shaped by evolutionary forces that would have destroyed their own civilizations before they ever developed space travel general. Vex asked the question that every alien was thinking: are all humans like this? Are they all natural-born killers who can turn invisible and read minds? Dr. Park's son smiled sadly. No, she said. Most humans are peaceful people who want to build families and create beautiful things. But every human carries millions of years of predatory instincts that can be awakened when necessary. Our Special Forces soldiers are just humans who have learned to use these ancient skills in modern warfare. She explained that human civilization had spent thousands of years trying to control these violent instincts through law, religion, and social pressure. But when humans needed to fight, those instincts could be unleashed with devastating effect against enemies who had never faced anything like them. The galaxy has been at peace for so long that you have forgotten what real predators look like. She continued, humans remember, because we never stopped being predators. We just learned to control when and how. We hunt. Commander Kang Su stared at the human woman with new understanding. She looked small and fragile compared to the massive aliens around her, but now he knew that appearances meant nothing when dealing with humans. Every human was potentially as dangerous as their most elite soldiers. The meeting ended with a disturbing conclusion. Humans were not just another species that could be conquered or controlled. They were apex predators from a death world who had retained all their hunting instincts while developing the intelligence to use those gifts strategically. The alien military leaders returned to their ships with a new respect for the small beings from Earth. They had learned that technology could not overcome millions of years of evolution, and that the most dangerous enemy was one who could turn your own strengths against you. Word spread through the fleet that humans were not like other aliens. They were something else entirely, something that the galaxy had never encountered before. The fear was no longer just about losing battles, it was about facing a species that could rewrite the rules of warfare itself. Admiral Zeth stood before the massive tactical display showing the entire Terran system. His 3 fleets hung in space like metal mountains, each one carrying enough firepower to crack a planet's surface. The largest military operation in Galactic history was about to begin, and Earth would be turned into burning ash within hours. The full-scale invasion of Earth had been planned for months after the humiliating defeats in the training exercises. 3 entire fleets would converge on the human homeworld, bringing overwhelming force that no amount of human trickery could overcome. The message would be clear to the entire galaxy that the Galactic Council still ruled space, but as Admiral Zeth prepared to give the attack order, something unprecedented began to happen across his massive fleet. Individual units started reporting problems that made no sense. Equipment failures appeared in perfectly maintained systems. Medical emergencies struck healthy soldiers, and urgent redeployment orders came from commands that had never been issued. Captain Lim so documented everything from her position as Fleet Intelligence Officer. She had been monitoring communications across all 3 fleets, and what she discovered was both shocking and terrifying. The soldiers were lying. The equipment was fine, the medical emergencies were fake, and the redeployment orders were completely made up. The truth was much simpler and far more frightening. The alien soldiers were refusing to fight humans. They would rather face court-martial and military prison than encounter the terrifying beings from Earth who could appear from nowhere and break armies with fear alone. The mass refusal began in the outer sectors where rumors about human capabilities had grown to mythical proportions. Entire divisions reported that their weapon systems were malfunctioning, even though technicians could find nothing wrong. Veterans of 100 campaigns claimed sudden illness that required immediate medical evacuation. Sergeant Major Yoon Ho watched the alien fleets from Earth's orbital defense station. The massive ships had enough power to destroy the planet 10 times over, but they hung in space like frightened animals. Their crews had seen the battle recordings from Zirion and Korax and heard the stories that grew more terrifying with each telling. The psychological warfare had worked too perfectly. The humans had intended to make alien soldiers cautious and respectful, but instead, they had created a legend that made them seem like supernatural beings who could not be defeated by conventional means. Major Kim Tae received reports from human intelligence operatives throughout the galaxy. The stories about human special forces had spread to every alien military base in known space. Each retelling added new impossible abilities until humans seemed capable of walking through walls, reading thoughts, and predicting the future. On the alien flagship commander, Kang Su read incident reports that painted a picture of military collapse without a single shot being fired. Transport pilots reported navigation errors that prevented them from reaching Earth. Combat units discovered critical supply shortages that had not existed the day before support. Crews found mechanical problems in equipment that had been working perfectly. The alien military machine that had conquered 700 worlds was grinding to a halt because its operators were too scared to function. Every soldier who had watched the exercise recordings knew what happened to units that fought humans. They had seen entire battalions broken, not by superior firepower, but by psychological pressure. They could not understand or counter. Dr. Park Sun had warned that this might happen during her briefing, but the alien commanders had not believed her. They thought fear was a temporary emotion that could be overcome with discipline and training. But human psychological warfare was designed to create lasting trauma that would affect enemy soldiers for the rest of their lives. The refusal spread through the fleets like a virus. Soldiers talked to other soldiers, sharing their fears and amplifying each other's terror. Unit commanders found themselves unable to maintain discipline when their own officers were secretly hoping the invasion would be canceled. Lieutenant Colonel Choi Hai monitored alien communications from Earth and was amazed by what she heard. Alien soldiers were describing humans as demons who could control reality itself. They claimed that human warriors could become invisible at will, could appear in multiple places simultaneously, and seemed to know exactly what their enemies would do before they did it. None of this was true, but the aliens believed it completely. The human soldiers were skilled and well-trained, but they were not supernatural beings. They had simply used techniques that alien minds could not comprehend because they had evolved from completely different survival pressures. Admiral Seth tried to rally his forces with speeches about duty and honor, but his words fell on deaf ears. The soldiers had made their choice. They would rather face any punishment than encounter the creatures from Earth who had turned warfare into a form of psychological torture. Captain Lim so received a coded message from an alien intelligence officer who had become sympathetic to humanity. The message was simple but devastating. 90% of the invasion force had found ways to avoid combat, charge duty. The remaining 10% were so terrified that they could barely function. The great invasion fleet that was supposed to crush Earth remained in space, paralyzed by fear. Stories continued to spread among the alien crews about humans who could phase through solid matter, who could predict enemy movements with perfect accuracy, and who became more dangerous when wounded or outnumbered. General Vex himself had become obsessed with studying human military doctrine, not to defeat it, but to understand how such primitive beings had created something so psychologically effective. He spent hours watching battle recordings, trying to comprehend how 12 soldiers had broken 1,500 without using advanced technology. The alien soldiers were not cowards. They had fought bravely against many enemies across the galaxy, but humans represented something completely outside their experience. Other alien species fought using familiar tactics and predictable strategies, but humans seemed to rewrite the rules of combat itself. Yunho knew that Earth could not actually defend itself against 3 full fleets if they attacked simultaneously. The human military was brave and clever, but they did not have the numbers or firepower to stop such a massive invasion. The only thing protecting Earth was the aliens' own fear. The stalemate continued for days, with the alien fleets hanging motionless in space while their crews invented new excuses to avoid combat duty. The soldiers had seen what happened to units that fought humans, and they wanted no part of it, regardless of orders or consequences. News of the mass refusal reached the Galactic Council, who could not believe that their mighty military had been stopped, not by enemy action but by their own imagination. The humans had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had won a war without fighting a battle. The alien commanders finally understood that they were not dealing with just another species that could be conquered through superior technology. Humans had weaponized fear itself, turning the aliens' own minds against them in ways that no amount of firepower could overcome. As the invasion fleet remained frozen in space, unable to attack and unwilling To retreat, the galaxy began to realize that everything had changed. The age of easy conquest was over, because humanity had introduced a new kind of warfare that made traditional military thinking obsolete. The humans had not defeated the alien fleets. With better weapons or superior numbers, they had won by being exactly what millions of years of evolution had made them. Perfect predators who understood that the mind was the ultimate battlefield, and fear was the most powerful weapon of all. 6 months after the first exercise on Zerion, the entire galaxy had changed. The Galactic Council chambers were filled with representatives from 700 worlds, all gathered to witness something that had never happened before in 3,000 years of galactic history. The mighty combined fleet was surrendering to a species they had once considered primitive. Ambassador Shin Mi sat at the negotiation table, wearing a simple blue dress that looked plain compared to the elaborate robes and armor of the alien delegates. But everyone in the ceremonial hall knew that the real negotiations had not taken place in meeting rooms. They had happened on training grounds and in the minds of soldiers who had seen what humans could do. Peace treaty was signed with golden ink on paper made from earth trees, but the pen that wrote humanity's freedom was guided by the memory of 12 soldiers who had defeated 1,500. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the smallest actions could have the biggest consequences. Captain Li Jun stood behind Ambassador Shin Mi as she signed the document that made Earth an equal member of the galactic community. He remembered sitting quietly in alien war rooms, listening to commanders plan easy victories against primitive humans. Now those same commanders spoke of humans with respect and barely hidden fear. The treaty granted humanity full membership in the Galactic Council with voting rights equal to any other species Earth. Whoa!